Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Barrow Borough Council's Executive Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Derek Brooke and I chair the executive. We've all done loads of these before now, so a very quick reminder to people, turn your phones on to silent, please. If you wish to speak, use the hand thing in the Zoom. If you're not speaking, keep yourself on mute so you don't come out with some nonsense that goes viral. Don't interrupt other speakers, please. If you do lose your connection, we will stop for 10 minutes to try and sort it out. So I'm sure you don't need reminding that we're on YouTube. So behave yourselves. And if we have a vote, if we need a vote, we'll ask Democratic Services to manage the process. So let's hope that this is better than watching United and West Ham last night. I've been assured it will be more exciting than that. So have we any apologies? Can Democratic Services do the roll call of members, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Barlow.
Present.
We've got apologies from Councillor Biggins. Lezard.
Present.
Brooke.
Present.
Edwards. H.
Present.
Gorn.
Present.
Councillor Gorn is subbing for Councillor McClure. Hamilton.
Here.
Maddox. Morgan.
Present.
Pemberton.
Present.
Roberts.
Present.
Ronson.
Present.
Thompson A.
Present.
Councillor Thompson is subbing for Councillor Biggins. Chief Executive.
Present.
Director of Resources.
Present.
Director of People and Place.
Present.
Assistant Director of Community Services. Is Keith Johnson on the line? I thought he was. We'll move on. Assistant Director Housing.
Present.
Head of Legal and Governance.
Present.
Development Services Manager, Policy Regeneration and Information.
Present.
Property Services Group Manager.
Present.
Commercial Estates Manager.
Present.
Maintenance and Asset Manager.
Present.
John Byford, Consultant.
Present.
Sandra Kemsley.
Present.
We also have Natalie Chappell's Temporary Assistant Chief Constable, Sarah Jackson, Tim Lowes and John Murphy for the Barrow's new constellation. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Agenda item 2. Have we got any urgent items? I believe we haven't. No. And agenda item 3. Are there any members wish to move any delegated matter non-delegated? Doesn't look like it. Agenda item 4, admission of the public and press. There are 2 items which are in part 2, which we'll go into part 2 later. Other than that, we all happy with everything being in part 1? And for our millions of YouTube watchers to watch it? Yes. Agenda item 5, declarations of interest. Have we got any? No. Agenda item 6, confirmation of minutes. Do we agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of January 2021 be signed when I can get in the town hall?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Public participation. We've had no requests to ask a question, make representations or present a deputation or petition. Whew. So now on to agenda item 8, and it's only 2:05. Yes. So I would like to welcome Natalie Chappell, Sarah Jackson, Tom Laws and John Murphy to the meeting to give a presentation on Barrow's new constellation, and it's all yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're really excited to be here as Barrow's new constellation. We've got something really exciting to share with you today. So as some of you might know, back in December, we had 15 fantastic people. They're from all walks of life across our borough, and they became a crew. They're a group that are fiercely passionate about the area, and they've all gone on an astonishing journey together, which was all held remotely because of COVID restrictions. So they each came with labels such as police superintendent, technical coordinator, nail technician, natural environment champion, and former mayor. But to the crew, they are Sarah, Tom, and John. They're all on the call today, and they're going to share some of their experiences. But yeah, the crew, they were given time and space to dream and explore, and collectively, they've lovingly come up with a set of guiding lights, the stars that are Barrow's new constellation. And that's going to be a way of helping us all chart to a brighter future for the borough. But in order to do that, they had to go on a very honest, immersive, and emotional voyage of discovery. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play you some audio, and this is just a little part of Barrow in her own words.
Did they even know we're here? I must have never heard of it, until you mentioned the shipyard on nuclear subs.
I think they think it's deprived and shit all.
I think everywhere has an opinion of Barrow, that it's a dark place, that it has nothing to offer, that it feels grimy and underdeveloped, that there's nothing here.
I think that we still live in terraced houses with cobble streets, and we have gas lights on the street lights.
It's like, oh, well, you want to go and live in Cumbria, but not Barrow, or, you know, Whitehaven, Workington. All up the West Coast, I think, gets tarred with the same brush.
I often think it's connected with our name, you know, Barrow in Furness, and is that some ancient or some thoughts connecting with the iron and steel industry?
And I think Barrow takes the shitty end of the stick for the whole country with the nuclear submarines that we make, yet there's no respect for that.
I've travelled the world extensively, and everyone seems to know about Barrow, but they always see it in a negative light. They've always got something to say, and that really pisses me off.
It bothers me that people Barrow bash. It bothers me that we do it as well.
People who live here get very defensive, or I know I do, and I find it very personal.
You know, and I don't think sometimes Barrovians help themselves, but people diss in the town all the time, and I'll be honest, I have myself, but I'm a Barrovian, and I live here, and I'm allowed to do that.
The only time I really see or hear much about Barrow is on the news, and it amuses me in a way because all they put on it is Egerton Court or BAE. Well, that alone gives the world an outside perception of what Barrow is. Horrifically poor or stinkingly rich. And where's the middle? The middle are the people that are in Barrow. Well, nobody seems to speak to them.
I always head for water. No matter how far I am away from home, water always makes me feel closer. I guess it's growing up surrounded by it on Walney. And looking at the faded snow on Black Combe, the tide is almost in, but it's calm. The shafts of sunlight poking out of the clouds, drenching some of the windmills in sun. A lot of people hate these windmills. I just think there's something beautiful in them. There's nothing else there. It's freezing, but I'm in the car. I've got the heating on. This is the most beautiful place to live.
I'm sat on the banking, overlooking Cavendish Dock, just at the entrance to Salthouse Mills. Amazing panorama out in front. You can see the railway line bringing trains in. In fact, the trains just come into Barrow, presumably from Lancaster. I can see the port and the industrial landscape that the port brings with it, and a ship there. I can see the causeway. I can see people walking dogs. And I can see fishermen, quite a few fisher tents up around me and behind me.
I'm currently down on the Channel side. I'm looking out, I can see Bigger Village, Prio Island, Roe Island, the gas terminal,
the glittering sun on the water, not a breath of wind. I can see the seagulls and the engines of the ship, the smell of fresh air. It brings you to a completely different place. You can turn your phone off and you could be a million miles away from anywhere.
It's a beautiful place. I'm so blessed to live where I do. I can see just fields and snow-capped mountains in the distance.
We get very defensive, but I think we also have to be really, really honest with ourselves and say that there are these dark things there, that actually sometimes people have a point. Some of the dark things really scare me as a mother. The drug use in the town, increasing levels of violence, empty shops, just create a really stark landscape sometimes, and a sense of hopelessness. It's there, you can't ignore it.
There is a lot of deprivation, empty shops, and it's a real shame because, you know, it never used to be this way.
You know, there's a lot of child poverty, and unfortunately sometimes with poverty can lead to abuse, and that really does break my heart.
If you run down buildings, look at Cornwall Street, years ago when I was younger, I spent many time down Cornwall Street, and now it's not open. To me, it's a bit of a sad, dark place, and it's a shame really that the town centre is going the way it's going.
You know, these things are not good. They're not good. Like at one time it had a beautiful full set of teeth, and each building's like another tooth being knocked out, another gap, another gap.
It's at the end of a peninsula. It's quite a closed community. There's a lot of prejudice. There's a lot of community tensions.
Unfortunately, at the moment, being in Barrow is I find that quite an unsafe place for me to be myself.
Dark isn't always poverty. For me, dark can be those that judge the people in poverty and make those less than feel lesser than. That's what's dark.
It is all about the shipyard, and I really feel for young people coming up through schools and growing up in Barrow and not wanting to work in the shipyard. And what else is there to life about Barrow being by the sea is it's got huge skies and huge horizons, but I don't think we spend enough time lifting our heads up and seeing those horizons and dreaming about all the different things that we could do and that could be part of our future and could be what we want to spend our life doing.
Of course there's darkness in the town. There's darkness in every town in the country and every village throughout the world and every city throughout the world. It's things that we have to live with and support people who have the needs and that extra support to bring them out of that darkness and bring them into the light.
It's about what can we do to change the dark and the negative parts of Barrow to give everybody the same opportunities, be in the same boat, and overall be one complete unit. Over the last few months, 6 to 12 months, I think that's really shone through the support that businesses, charities, people in the community helping each other out with COVID and helping vulnerable people within the community.
Genuine Barrovian people helping each other.
Proud of the history, proud of the industry. Poverty is an issue, mental health is an issue, and people show great strength in overcoming those things, and that historical and traditional feeling of working class people, supporting working class people, doing things for each other.
We know somebody on every single street, practically, in this town. My children could walk home from school and know that there was always a door to knock on if they wanted to.
It's real. It's warm, it's friendly, and it's on the edge. And everything that happens here feels like it's on the edge. On the edge looking into the rest of the world. It's often said that it's at the longest end of the longest cul-de-sac. Actually, I think it's at the very start of something, looking back in. It doesn't need to be like anywhere else.
Barrow's full of hard-working people with morals and values, and they care for each other. They just do really care.
Light is in everyone in this town. I think everyone's destined for greatness if they so wish to tap into it.
Barrow to me as well is also actually at the heart of the country, in my opinion, because the skills, the knowledge, the history and the background that the employees and the people living in Barrow have is second to none.
Is truly loved as a town, not because we want businesses to come in, not because we want the outside world to like us, because we want to like us. What we have on our doorstep, the Millennium Woods, North Walney, South Walney, Furness Abbey, the beach, Ron Head, Askham Beach, Barrow Park.
It isn't like many other places, and it doesn't need to be. It needs to be confident in itself.
If it was a person, I'd want to give it a bit of a shake and be like, come on, you know? Like, come on, like, smarten up. Like, it's somebody that I've loved that's kind of worn out and tired, but has such great potential. I'm not really bothered about anybody else outside of the town when it comes to that perception. Because if we believe it, other people will believe it. We have to make the story. We can't wait for other people to tell us we're okay. Because if we don't believe it, nobody else will either.
Thank you, John. Thanks for playing that. I think you'll appreciate that's very real, very raw, and it is a very beautiful piece of audio. We have got some members of the crew here today who I want to introduce you to. So we've got Sarah Jackson, and she's going to speak, and then following her there'll be Tom and John also.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, super. Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me today. I'm really delighted actually to come and speak about what happened, because it was just wonderful. And I would put it out there, in 26 years of being in the police, definitely one of the highlights of my career. It was absolutely nothing like you would expect from a normal conference, and it completely surpassed my expectations. It wasn't even a conference, but that's what I went into it thinking it was going to be. It was a truly wonderful experience where humans connected with each other, and there was no agenda other than their love for Barrow. Everyone was completely equal, and it created a really special place where people could share their innermost worries, their concerns, their laughs, their passion. And, you know, there were tears and joy all that week. And the organisers, the methodology they brought was absolutely incredible. The way they led us through the journey throughout the week was very clever, and it led us to a place where we ended up realising all the stars that we needed to guide us, our guiding principles, if you like, which I'm sure you're going to hear more about in time. On a personal level, it helped people to see me, you know, beyond the barrier of this uniform, and saw me as a person, you know, a mum and a wife and a friend, rather than the local police chief. And that's so important, because we have to break down any us and them barriers if we're going to work together as a really cohesive team. Because the reality is there have been tensions, particularly over the last year. So building these trustful relationships is for me even more crucial. And I'm reassured that we will continue to build on that particular week. Well, we've continued to come together since then, actually, for the last 2 months. And it will show just how much we do care about serving our communities. And these new relationships are already paying dividends. We've got some really good developments. We're linked into Dean from Barrow together in terms of working with our newly formed Charlton Policing team, so we can support each other in working with young people who may be going down the wrong path. I know at least 2, if not 3 of the crew are going to be joining our revamped advisory group, which brings the public in to help us shape our policies and practice so that we police in a way that is legitimate and proportionate, and more importantly, in a way that Barrow needs, rather than in a way that we think Barrow needs. And there's a real difference with that. And once this god-awful pandemic's gone, John, Natalie and Alec have already met with, you'll hear from John in a minute, with my local policing team to talk about some of the work we'll do with John, and I won't steal his thunder. But anyway, I'll pass over, but in short, it was fantastic, and from this we're going to build something truly brilliant and work on an equal footing, a new footing that puts our community policing approach at the foremost of everything we do locally. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much for that. You're going to hear from Tom now.
Yes, hello everyone. It's lovely to meet you all. So as Natalie said, I'm a technical coordinator. I work in BAE Systems, and I am also a nail technician. So when I started the week, I was very dubious. I've presented and spoke with hundreds and thousands of people all over the country on different initiatives within organisations that can make people healthier and happier, which is, you know, what Sam works to do towards this town. And when I came in, I thought a lot of people would find it very fluffy. It's just one of them initiatives that we start and then, oh, it was just one of them nice to haves and we don't touch it again. But I think with this, and thankfully to Sam, we've been given this opportunity where we can really make positive change within Barrow. I think everyone that's on the screen, we're all passionate about Barrow in some way, no matter what our job roles is, whatever, you know, our hobbies are, we are all passionate about where we live, you know, for a reason or not. And I think that the things that we've discussed, like Sarah touched on, you know, the principles that we think would elevate this town to, you know, something even better than it already is, you know, it's going to be really good. I find that, and as I said on the audio that was kindly played, at the moment, personally, I don't feel safe in this town. And I know that I'm not the only one. And, you know, one thing that I work towards is LGBTQ plus rights, but it's not just about the rights for them, it's about the rights for everyone in this town. You know, we are all so diverse in who we are, you know, whether that be age, religion, gender, orientation, you know, anything that we can imagine. We all want the same thing, and that's just to be listened to and to be told that we matter and our thoughts and our opinions are valued. And that's something that this constellation's really provided with us, that, you know, we can make change. It's happened in so many different towns and cities across the world, so why can't it happen here? You know, and we are totally in control of our destiny. There is always factors that we can't control, but we are always, you know, we can always make that change if we desire to do it. You know, and we all on this call will want to change something different about Barrow, and we're all, you know, striving towards our own roles, our own jobs, or what we think. And that's something that the constellation can provide. It can provide the avenue to do that. And I think it was such a special experience. And I just wish that so many more people were able to be involved. And that's why I'm so glad that we're able to come and do that to you all and speak with you all about that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. And now we've got John.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. And again, I'll thank everyone for inviting us to give this short presentation. Tom's just used an interesting word. He said the word fluffy. And when I applied to join this, I really didn't know what to expect. And I think the first few days, it was most certainly fluffy and very arty. And so felt a bit out of my depth, really, you know, and I think you're all aware, as indeed all you are, you know, the fact that you're on the council, the fact that you're supporting the town. It's really is about the love for the town and dare to say the uniqueness of Barrow. You know, you can travel to any town in the UK. You think of the major conurbations and Manchester, Liverpool, all these places, where the quality of life at the moment, going through what we're going through, must be absolute hell. But at least here in Barrow, we've got a uniqueness. We've got an oven-ready product here in Barrow. We just need to sell the product to the rest of the world, not necessarily for tourism. I don't really think that's a road that'll pick up too quickly. But we need to improve the quality of life for the people who are lucky enough to enjoy the town. And I have been working quite closely with some ideas I've had for many, many years. Obviously, you're aware that I've been doing these guided walks, God help me, for over 40 years now. And I've managed to pass that love on and beat the drum for the town of Barrow to many, many, many thousands of people who perhaps had a negative perception of the town themselves. And I think in my own little way, I've managed to turn that around a little bit. And I've been working and will continue to work with Sarah and the police. We've come across this wonderful thought. And again, it's been my idea for more years than I dare to remember. But we're looking at some of these children now in Barrow who are just ready to fall off the edge of the cliff. They're just a bit dodgy. And my idea has always been that if we can convince them to have a sense of pride of where they live, a sense of pride. I mean, we don't have to go on long walks. I mean, low tide on Walney on a summer's evening, just picking up a few winkles, a few crabs, and getting their hands in the pools and picking up a few starfish, or have them up the sand dunes, running down the sand dunes, playing around the dunes, stuff that we all did. We all did. That's almost being lost out of our community and out of our society. So I think the way I want to look forward is to continue this, continue to try and build more positivity in the people in the town. And it's been a unique opportunity, even at my age, to be, I'm not that old, but just to be involved with this wonderful group of people with such a diverse amount of skills. And it's going to open many doors in the near future. So I can only thank you all again. And, please take note of what we're saying. I also thought the audio was absolutely amazing and really does get across the message that we've got this unique product. So we need to make this town a town for our people who can enjoy a really high quality, positive life. Thanks for that.
Oh, thank you so much, John. Yeah, that beautiful piece of audio was produced by very talented Joe Barrett, who worked with us during Constellation Week. So I think that's all from me for now, but I think Sam just wants to conclude just with a few words. So thank you very much.
Yeah, just first off, and I am conscious of time and the agenda we've got today, but have any members of exec got any questions for any of the crew before I wrap it up? Sean?
Yeah, not so much a question, but I just wanted to thank everybody that came along, the two young gentlemen, John and Tom, for speaking so eloquently, and to Sarah. I think this kind of initiative makes so much difference. You know, you can bang on about Fluffy as much as you want and Artie, but just to see the humanity that's come out of this project is something that we really need locally. You know, I've had sort of bullying myself around the prayer centre and my support of people's right for religious expression, and and having like a lot of LGBT friends. I know what you're saying there, Tom. So I think it's just heartwarming to see so many people coming together and sharing their humanity rather than their hate and their differences, because that's the only way we're not gonna do it playing party politics. We're not going to do it being hateful. We're going to do it with love, and I don't mind saying that openly, which is a real shame that saying things like that openly now is seen as a bad thing, that you're somehow a snowflake for wanting love in your life and you're wanting community in your life. So I just thank you so much. That's really heartwarming what you've done today, so I think you should all be very proud of yourselves.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I seem to have taken over. But Councillor Pemberton, did you want to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Well, let me say, first of all, I agree with everything that's been said today. We haven't marketed and sold our town so that we can develop what nature has given to us. And it's not always for tourists, as has been said. I mean, we want people to come and live here and take up the jobs that we're offering. So it is certainly a fact that we shouldn't put so many negatives into our scene, and don't be shy in putting forward what we have to offer. It was mentioned about developing areas, and I think Cavendish Dock was mentioned, which I've already mentioned. I think that's a wonderful area to develop, which we have. And as I say, I agree with everything that's been said, and let's hope that we can go forward together. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks for that. So just to wrap up, really, obviously in 20 minutes, we couldn't share all the things that we went through in that week. I think just with the audio itself, there were over 10 hours of audio recorded from us all ringing an answer phone number and speaking into it. And that was distilled down into a longer audio than the one that you heard today. And it would be really great. And I know the crew want me to invite all of you and all members of the Borough Council to come to an evening in a few weeks' time so that we can play the whole audio. You can get a chance to talk to the crew a little bit more about their hopes and dreams and what they want to see come from this. But more importantly, they all mentioned the constellation and the stars and the guiding principles that they came up with during that week. And one of the big things that came out of the week was the creation of the constellation, Barrow's constellation, which is 12 guiding principles. And we can't do that justice in this meeting today. So we'd really like to invite you to come to an event towards the end of this month where we'll go through those principles and see how they can relate to what we do as a council, relate to what you do in your daily lives when you're not being a councillor, and how we can really start to embed those principles into the work that we do in the borough so that we really do bring that pride to the fore. I mean, for me, being part of that week, working and being alongside those 15 people that really were from all different walks of life, and the one thing that we all had in common was that real absolute passion and pride in this town and this borough. And if we could have bottled that and did something with that, then we could really change things for the better. And it's how we really tap into that spirit and bring it to the fore. So I think this is the start of the journey rather than the end. And it's got a lot of potential really to help us all hook our dreams onto something so that we can take the borough forward collectively. So that's it from this end. Just thanks to Tom and Sarah and John and Natalie. Natalie, none of this would have happened without Natalie. She's kept very quiet today. It absolutely wouldn't have happened without Natalie. So thanks to you for coming today, and we'll pick up again next time I see you.
Thanks for taking over as chair, Sam.
Sorry, I'll go back to my place now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
On behalf of all the committee, thanks very much. And I think we do see this as the start of something and not the end of something. So I'm sure we'll all take part in this next event and see this as part of our going forward. I mean, we did a much more outwardly looking positive plan last year just before lockdown, and this kind of thing is part of what we want to do. You know, I think sometimes people forget that as councillors and council officers, we actually live here. We are residents as well, you know, and we're all in it together is the way I kind of look at it. So thank you very much for coming, and we will see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. So I think we are back on the agenda, are we? Yes. Agenda item 9, Housing Management Forum recommendations. Would Janice Sharp, Assistant Director of Housing, please present the report and the recommendations?
Jan, you're on mute.
That's our first you're on mute of the meeting.
Sorry. Yeah, the purpose of the report is to agree the housing revenue account budget for the 21-22 financial year and provide the expected outturn budget and balance for the current year. Recommendations are that exec agree today that they note the information in the report and note the balances on the expected outturn, agree the basis of the draft budget as proposed within the budget, agree the dwellings increase, the garage increase, and other considerations and priorities. 2021 saw the first year of the new rent policy for Barrow Borough Council, and it permits social rents to be increased. We've had 4 years of a decrease of 1%. This new rent policy of doing the increase plus 1%, increasing the line of the CPI plus 1%, this is going to be in place for 5 years, including the current year. So this is positive for us after a 4-year austerity as such, where we've had to really trim our sales and cut down. But the continued sales of properties under right to buy obviously continues to pose a risk, and general increase in inflation will always remain a challenge for the housing revenue account. We've also got universal credit, obviously, that continues to impact on the housing revenue account's income, and the recovery from the ongoing pandemic, which is the country's been faced, and also the housing revenue account's income over the coming financial year. We are fortunate that during the pandemic, our rent arrears have actually decreased. This is in the main due to many of our residents being on benefits which haven't been affected by the pandemic. But we are envisaging, as the pandemic continues and the changes in furloughing, that there may be a newer client group approaching the service that are suffering financial hardship that haven't experienced that before. So we feel as though we're in a slight honeymoon period at the moment. Obviously, we've got homelessness that we fund as well. So we're still obviously being very wary of our expenditure. We're not filling posts where we don't need to. We're trimming our sales wherever we possibly can, while still trying to provide an effective service during what is already a difficult time for everybody. So I'm asking that that the report be agreed and that we can impose the rent increase and continue to endeavour to keep a healthy housing revenue account. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Jan. Kevin, got your hand up?
Thanks, Chair. Just to follow what Jan was saying there, I've been a councillor now for 27 years, and this is one of the best departments I've ever worked alongside with. Absolutely wonderful. Some of the things, like Jan was saying there, 4 years or not, with actually having to cut the rents, and yet they still delivered. We're still on top of the decent home standard. The STAR survey, absolutely wonderful. So the service these members of staff, not forgetting COVID, where they were actually doing grant applications and everything else, and just looking through the maintenance here, 150 properties annually for new windows and 150 central lighting systems annually. I think they're absolutely brilliant. So congratulations to all the staff. And as Jan there said, moving the recommendations, I like to second them, Chair.
Thank you.
Have we got any more questions of Jan or any comments? Have we agreed? Do we agree the recommendations? Yeah.
Agreed.
Looks like it. Yes. Right. Thank you. Right. Next item. I got this right. Item 10, budget proposals. Sue Roberts, Director of Resources.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the budget for 2021-2022, similar to the HRA budget that we just spoke on. So this is looking at everything apart from the housing revenue accounts, called the general fund of the council. The budget's proposed just over 7.2 million. That is much reduced from previous years, and that's just because of a statutory treatment of the business rate and council tax income. The budget is balanced, self-balanced in the year, with a £5 increase on the Band D council tax, and the use of earmarked reserves for one-off items. Reserves are not used for recurring expenditure, it's just one-off items in the year. The movement in reserves for business rates is to recognise the extended retail relief that was awarded in this financial year. The results of business rate collection and council tax are recognised in later financial years, but it's not an impact on the council's bottom line as such. It's funded by reliefs, by grants. It just has to move from year to year according to the statutory requirements. The budget does take account of inflation on spend. There aren't any particular areas of service growth to mention apart from the cost of inflation and price pressures. There's also some proposed fees and charges in terms of income within the report, and there's an appendix setting out all of the fees and charges that are in place. A big piece of work with this budget has been the consideration of COVID, and what's included is cost pressure, so additional expenditure. That additional expenditure has been included at 486,000, which is the amount that government have allocated as a grant. That might be the first of a number of grants, we don't know at this point in time, but 486 have been allocated for additional cost pressures. So that cost pressure has been included alongside the income that covers it. The budget is funded from service income, which is included within the, if members are looking at the appendix, that it's kind of within those service areas. The rest of it is more general income, so unring-fenced income, and that's government grant, council tax and business rates. So council tax and business rates, obviously they're raised and collected locally. So the settlement establishes that government grant element, the revenue support grant, and sets a baseline for business rates. So that baseline is for us 3.1 million, but we actually collect more than that, and that the total we collect is shared between the government, the borough council and the county council. So the borough share is more closer to 4 million. But given the risks of the impact on the local economy, there may be changes to rateable values through appealing to the valuation office. There may be issues with collection, and we have to reflect on that when we're looking at how much of that income we can count on for the next financial year. So some of that excess, if you like, has been put away into our reserves to cover those losses, because we couldn't fund those if they weren't provided for. So we have provided for that. So nationally, the settlement that's announced, the provisional announcement was before Christmas. It was finalised this month. There's it's called core spending power. It's like a measure or a comparison of the amounts allocated to each authority. So core spending power is looking at cash, if you like, from one year to the next, and it includes revenue support grant, the business rates, council tax, and a couple of other grants. That one of them is New Homes Bonus. We don't actually get New Homes Bonus at this point in time, and a new grant. So there's the revenue support grant for the borough is just under 1.3 million, which is slightly up year on year. All these the baseline, the revenue support grant, are inflated each year. Normally it's the business rate multiplier, but that's frozen, so it's a different indicator that's been used. Council tax is assumed within that to be generated at the maximum that's permitted before a referendum is triggered. So that's either £5 or 2%, whichever is the higher. For us, the £5 is just over 2%, so the £5 is 2.08% that's been applied. Now that council tax is £5 at band D, but there's a ratio between the bands. So we've got 8 to 9% of properties below band D, so they pay less than £5 a year extra. And band A is predominantly the highest. It's 59% of properties, and that's £3.34 a year or 6 pence a week. So the additional grant that's in that formula this year is called the Lower Tier Services Grant, and that's one-off funding to protect the core spending power. So the Borough Council is seeing an increase of 3.7% in core spending. Nationally, it's 4.5, 4.6, and that Lower Tier Services Grant protects that position. So that award has kind of kept our spend year on year as a positive, in addition to the council tax income. Just leading on from council tax, there is a grant of 119,000 to support the council tax income position. We have seen an increase in the number of claimants or claims that we're paying out because household income's been impacted by the furlough scheme and just COVID in general, and there's recognition that the cost of that scheme is borne by the precepting authorities, so that's ourselves and Cumbria County Council for here, and also the police authority. So we've, as a borough, been allocated 119,000 to support that income, because we're sort of paying out more, so we're collecting less. As there's also the 486 for COVID. There's also a homeless prevention grant of 200,000 that's allocated, and that's spent within the service. That's actually ring fenced, whereas the other grants are unring fenced and fund the general fund, if you like. Homelessness grant is very specific. Also within the settlement and the COVID kind of recovery package, there's some compensation for sales fees and charge losses. So our income in the appendix that's looking year on year, there is a reduction in income that we're expecting to receive next year for services, because we can't provide those during a lockdown or restricted period. But when there's a recovery period, obviously you can't expect your income to come back 100% on day one. There has to be a gradual return anticipated in terms of budget. But there is this compensation scheme for particular elements of our income, which we've tried to estimate within the budget. So we will claim that compensation where we can. It's not 100% of the loss, it's 75%. But there's also some scheme eligibility criteria, so it's a bit complicated, but we've estimated that as best we can, and we will obviously maximise those claims as much as possible. Also within the world of income, there is a new scheme to fund or compensate for irrecoverable losses in business rates and council tax. So that's effectively looking where there's no way to recover amounts that were due in this year. The government's developing a scheme to provide some element of compensation for those losses as well. That's not as well developed, that's new, and that only applies to the income losses in this financial year. But as I mentioned before, losses in this year will impact future years' budgets and funds available. So it's another one where we're not able to estimate it, but because it's in this financial year, we'll hope that the impacts are limited to this financial year and don't pass on to future years. The losses that we recognise on council tax and business rates are able to be spread over 3 years, or have to be spread over 3 years from this year. Normally it's just 1 year ahead. The way that we deal with those through our budget is through volatility reserves, and that's why there's a big sort of movement of funds into reserves in this year to take them out again next year. We try to protect that core budget at all costs, because that's determining what business as usual costs, and that's what we need to see to plan going forward for services. So some pressures within the budget. We've got obviously very fortunate to have major projects either started or being developed to start, and to deliver those it's really essential to have programme management, strong controls around being the accountable body, and we've isolated into earmarked reserves funds to pay for that, because it's over and above the normal running costs of the authority. So we do need those extra skills to deliver those projects over a period of time. There's also the work around the local government reorganisation, and there has been some expenditure this year to get to the point we're at, but whichever authority model goes forward through consultation and onwards, there is still work to do to develop or respond to whatever needs to be responded to. Developed in terms of Barrow. Obviously, there are certain pieces of work that have already been created, but there is much more to do. So there's an inclusion in the budget of 200,000 to fund that external work drawn from our reserves. There's a couple of items in the report I've mentioned that are not currently included in the budget, but will be pressures that need to be considered. That's around leisure management. The leisure centre is operated under contract, but during COVID, obviously there's no income being generated, so a management fee, all the management fees had to be reviewed and revised, and that may continue beyond this financial year. Well, it probably will, but it's not. I'm not able to kind of guess that, so we need to review that as and when things develop. And also, I mentioned in the report about the pension fund. All pension funds in local government have a deficit, and deficit funding is part of our budget. Originally, when this year was projected, over 12 months ago, we were looking at putting money into reserves in case the deficit grew. Our deficit was higher than anticipated through the payments we're making, the instalments we're making. We have got some funds in reserves for that, and we're not able to put any away in 2021-22 as planned, but where there is any to put away into reserves as a result of the year of this year or next year, then we will put that against the pension deficit. It's not an imminent risk. It was more that we were trying to mitigate a future risk, so we'll keep that under consideration. I've also mentioned in the report about the establishment. There are a few projects that are working around aligning the organisation, the council, to the delivery of the council plan. I think we would say that, as recognised in the Growing Forward report, the aspects around community and business in particular need to be strengthened within the authority, so that, I mean, we have responded very well to make those connections very quickly, but if we'd kind of had those links a bit more firmly established, a bit more formalised, then I think we would have been in a even stronger position to respond. And I think the priorities obviously recognise people, place, prosperity. It's kind of those areas need to be really joined up with the services, rather than like having a traditional set of services. It's kind of joining those up. So there's a restructure being developed at the moment. I've also included mention of the looking at grading and job evaluation, those type of things that come along with the structure and a refresh of that establishment. I haven't priced anything into the budget because there are some vacancies, and we may be able to achieve what's needed through vacancy management. There'll obviously be some costs of external support for that, which will come out of the transformation reserve. But it's just to mention that, you know, that establishment work is ongoing. If there is a need to come back to members, then we will do that. But we may also be able to kind of contain that within the same overall budget. I've also mentioned another developing area around the IT programme moving forward. We've already agreed, as members have agreed, for the Agile Working Project for IT, which is basically kind of creating that basis for us to have much more flexibility around the systems we use and how we use them, doing meetings like over Zoom or using systems that are in the cloud. That once that basis is there, there's quite a few service areas that need to have their IT updated, and I thought it's not updated technologically, it's more functionality. We've got some quite limited functionality, and we need to take advantage of what's out there now. So it would be either upgrading or replacing what we have. Don't have that programme, so that's not built into the budget. That's more likely to be on the capital side anyway, as it's development and implementation, that we, rather than changing the way we do anything. But we would hope that the whole point of doing an IT change is to get an efficiency. So it's like making a business case to sort of self-fund those projects. In terms of reserves, there's a table in the report of all the items we're drawing out of reserves. They're drawn from the reserves as they're intended to be used, apart from, as I've mentioned, those specific ones. I'm also asking for a transfer between reserves to establish the major projects reserve balance being high enough to cover not just the cost commitments that we have, but also the delivery. That's mainly what that transfer is to cover. I'm also asking for, in terms of COVID, to potentially use some of the general fund balance, 400,000, if the impacts of COVID are greater than I've anticipated in the budget. It's all best, well, I would like to say educated guesses. We have got a basis for the estimates that we've made, but it's a bit of an unknown how long recovery might take. So there might be a need to call on more funds, and earmarked reserves are earmarked, so I really need to use some of the general balance, so it's not going to disturb any projects that are already committed. I would say that normally the budget pack is a little bit bigger. It's quite big as it is, but normally it would include capital programme, treasury strategy, medium-term plan. They're documents that are going to have to come to the next meeting. It's just quite a lot of work to do in one go, unfortunately. Just time has been a bit of an issue with producing a budget and all the other things that are going on. But attached is the pay policy document, which is one we have to bring through this process to get published to the website. It's a requirement under the Transparency Code. And all that is the basis of how pay is set for the authority. It's not changed since last year. It's not changed for a number of years. The only changes in it are the figures, because we have to update them each year. So that's basically just been refreshed. And that's it. There's not, as in not really service growth, but everything we can has been taken into account so that we can. But I can assure you that budget balance is within its own resources for 21-22.
Great, thanks, Sue. Can't have been easy producing a budget with all that's been going on for the last year. So well done. Hazel, I think. Right, we've got some hands up. Hazel first, then Anne, then Alan.
Okay. I'd just like to say thanks, Sue, for the budget that you've put forward. And at this point, thank you for the detailed presentation that you gave to our group as well on request. You've done an excellent job as always, and it must have been very difficult with the pandemic and all the grants that are coming into the council, because they're coming in almost daily at the moment. The money that we've been given as a council has been huge. And it's helped out tremendously. As a Conservative group, we agreed to the budget going forward to the council for consideration. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Hazel. Anne?
Yeah, I'd also like to add my thanks to Sue and her team, because the amount of pressure they've been under, I don't know how she's even managed to do a budget. It's been that much pressure with everything that's going on, with all the grants and all the COVID stuff and all the different strands she's got to keep together to even produce a budget. I think it's quite admirable that we're still going to have a balanced budget. I think a few councils will be struggling this year to find a way to balance the budget. And considering all the austerity over the past years, I think Sue's and the council have done a marvellous job in ensuring that we are going forward with a balanced budget, and we can actually see some growth in that budget, even if it's only to do like the major projects and things. It is growth, even if it is a specific growth. It's not a general growth where we've all put our hat in and said, oh, I want this and I want that and I want the other, but it is a growth, because we've got to ensure that going forward, the major projects that we have won money for, like the Housing Town Steel and the Dock Museum and Low Carbon Barrow, we've got to make sure that they are funded with the proper workers to ensure their delivery in the proper timescales and exactly how we want them. But I think your team's been marvellous, Sue, so make sure you give a great big congratulations to them all. And please, from my heart, please don't make 20 million audit reports for the next meeting, please.
Okay.
Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yes, congratulations, Sue, on using a balanced budget. I bet it's been a nightmare this year for you, waking up in the middle of the night screaming, I suspect. There are a couple of items that perhaps you could comment on. We've got £65,220 increase for inflation in contracted services and 11,870 increase for supplies and services. As inflation is near zero at the moment, and the banks are calling for a negative interest rate, should there be any increase at all to these companies? And another one, £200,000 allocated to cover local reorganisation costs. What areas in the local government reorganisation would take this amount of money? It seems quite high at the moment. And finally, the budget relies on the business-related relief, as you said. Is this fixed now? This figure of 3.6 million, is this fixed now, or is it subject to high street closures or anything of that nature? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, inflation we have allowed a much lower figure than we normally would. Some of the contracts are not just a single indice, so some of them are based on a split of pay, fuel, say, and then general inflation. So where we know those individual elements, we are still looking at the indices to see what's happening with those. So the inflation is lower than previous years, I would say, but there will still be some element of inflation. There's only a couple that are actually pinned on 1st of April's inflation. Some of them are later in the year. So we have reflected on that, but we will only be paying what it actually is at the time when the contract says we determine that new rate. So we have provided sort of prudently, because we think there will be some increase, but we're not going to pay those amounts out unless we actually have to at that point in time. For the local government reorganisation work, it's there's things that are continuing that have already started, such as kind of promoting the council's preferred option and justifying why that is the preferred option and the benefits that will generate, but also understanding the baseline of the area, the Barrow, not just the three together, because whatever model is proposed, Barrow needs to be firm on what we expect to get from this and what is our basis going into it. So that's things that don't just belong to the borough council. It could be things around health, around crime, the whole remit really of understanding. Well, we're going into it with this as our evidence base, and I think that the the publicity part of it, we don't want to lose any traction. It needs to be maintained. So we are, still promoting that even now, and that will continue through the year. There'll also be like the formal consultation process. I can see Sam's hand up. Does Sam want to comment on this one particular? Do you want to do business rates, or do you want to?
I don't want to do business rates. No. I'll leave that to you. But yeah, just to come back on that, I mean, I think the government's outline timetable, it's not definite yet, is that they will be starting formal consultation on any of the 4 proposals that have made it through within the next few weeks, probably. That'll run for about 2 months, and then they'll make a decision on their preferred option before summer and lay an order before Parliament before summer recess. So we'll know, if they stick to that time, if we manage to stick to that timescale, we'll know by about August time which is the preferred model for unitary councils in Cumbria. And whatever happens, that impacts on Barrow Borough Council, and it starts the clock ticking on the cessation of all the borough councils and the county council and the creation of a new model of local government, and that costs money. So there'll be huge transition costs in developing a new model, in working with our staff and other staff from other organisations to develop that model, and then actually to transition into the new model, with the likelihood that the shadow unitary would be elected in May 2022. So we will be working working to a really tight timescale, and we'll need support from external organisations, but we'll also need to support ourselves to get the council into the best place to make the best of whatever model comes forward, so that our residents benefit the most, and we've got the strong local government model for the future. So it is really important that we build that money into the budget now. We don't know, 200,000 is kind of a little bit of finger in the air and informed guesswork, but we do know that we will need some additional funding to be able to create that new model. What we did before Christmas in just 9 weeks was provide an outline proposal, which didn't go into any detail on how those services would be delivered, what the structure of the new organisation would look like, and that's a lot of work to go through, and we'll have quite tight timescales to do it. So I think that's why it's really prudent to put that line in the budget now, because we know it's coming.
Thanks, Sam, and well done, Sue. Thank you.
Thank you. I could just come back on the business rates one. So the 3.6 that's in the budget is not our guaranteed amount. Our guaranteed amount is the amount in the settlement, which is 3.1 million, but we're actually collecting more than that. So if I say that the baseline 3.1, we're actually collecting, our share is more like 4 million. So I've assessed that extra to see how much of that might fall away, and that's why I've got more or less half going into reserves and half funding the budget. But that has to be collected, obviously, and then any impacts from that not being collected will fall on the year after. So I'm very prudent around how much of that we actually retain as funding the budget. But it is the baseline from government is 3.1. I've actually got 3.6 in the budget.
Thank you, Tom.
Right, Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll add my thanks as well, Sue. Tremendous job. I was going to say as usual, but it's not been usual, has it, with what's gone on in the past year or so. I just want to sort of add a little bit to what Anne was saying about, you used the word prudent and it's balanced and things like that. And Anne said, we need to make sure we do deliver some of the things we've got in the pipeline, like Townsdale and Has and things like that. And I think, despite you saying it's prudent and things like that, I think it's still ambitious, because with those town, on top of the, I say, like physical things that will happen to the town as a result of Has and Townsdale and things like that, the people stuff that we've got in the pipeline, which we're still pushing ahead with. You saw the new Constellation stuff, but also the Poverty Truth Commission, the climate emergency stuff with the engagement about that as well, and we want to the impact, positive impact on people and residents, the ABCD, the asset-based community development stuff going forward, the stuff that we can push out from that. So it's people stuff, that's the ambitious stuff, and that's the bit that the COVID recovery is linked into all those initiatives just as much as the capital investment and the sort of the hubs that are going on. So I think in the circumstance we're in, with money's tight, and you said about I don't want to make a big thing of it, but this expected local government increase 4.5% nationally. I think he said I was at 3.7. Squeeze is on, it's tight. We don't know what's going to hit us in the next few months. But despite all that, it's to produce that budget and have those things in the pipeline to look forward to, and to help the area recover from COVID and come out of it with a positive attitude and things to look forward to. I think it's a really good position to be in. So I think we should just have a bit of hope for the future from a budget agenda item, which is unusual, isn't it? Thank you.
Any more? No, well, I hope you disinfected all that money and washed your hands after you counted it all, Sue, because we don't want to be picking up any more stuff after this. Right, do we all agree the budget then? Yes.
We do need a mover and seconder, please.
Do we?
Yes.
I'll move it.
Okay. Now can we agree it?
You can.
Right. Yes. Super. Right. Thanks for that, Sue. It looks like, according to my thing here, you're on again.
I am. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Well,
this is the flexible working policy. This has been mentioned think when I brought the IT Agile Working Project, because that kind of relates to the intentions around this policy. So we currently have a policy called the Flexible Working Policy, which is all around the hours people work and the patterns people work. What we're looking to do now is to introduce into that the where people work. And the report recognises that obviously we've got temporary arrangements now because of COVID. I hope I don't mention that every time I present a report, but it is there, and it has meant that we've had to make changes to the how people work, where people work. So this is kind of looking more forwards beyond that. So what we've experienced is that agile working or flexible working, whatever you want to call it, is beneficial to employee and employer. So there's obviously, we're not in a position where we're wanting to say everybody go home and work. That's had to be done temporarily, but in the future, if people choose to and it suits their role, work from home all or part of that time, we need a process and an approach to that to ensure we can still deliver services, but also kind of give that good balance between work, life, and kind of time that suits to work, whereas 9 to 5 is kind of the fixed frame at the moment, or has been at least. So what I've brought here is a set of principles, rather than wait for the policy to actually be finalised, because that has to go through consultation and similarly with detailed guidance. I wanted to see if members would be happy to agree the principles and allow the Chief Exec ultimately agree that with the union. And we've also included some staff consultation with Values and Behaviours Group and Health and Wellbeing Group to make sure all aspects are covered and considered, and kind of look to issue that guidance through training and awareness, not only for managers who will obviously have to consider applications for permanent changes, but also for staff to understand what we're actually offering on a permanent basis. Part of it, one recommendation does actually ask for the current home working statement to be removed. That was agreed through full council, and ultimately just says we don't do home working, which is not true. And it is a bit of a barrier to making some of the arrangements, especially where we are staff are accessing information that's held by other parties. So we have to comply with their requirements. And if part of that is us saying, no, we don't do home working, it doesn't work. So I actually need that to be set aside, and members to kind of agree that we do support flexible working, home working, and those arrangements will be kind of considered against each application. So that I know it's quite a long list of responsibilities, but it was the best way to set it out, and the body of that report will be lifted into the policy and go through consultation, go through formal consultation. But if those principles are acceptable, then we can take that forward, hopefully very quickly. As I say, we won't be able to kind of deal with applications until we're into more normal times, but at least if the framework is there and the process is developed, and we're kind of adding it to the current process for dealing with flexible applications, then it's going to all be ready, which is a good sign, I think, because I know some members of staff are very keen to continue either working fully at home or have that flexible arrangement. I do include in the implication section a note about sort of potential budget sort of costs, because we're not looking to remove somebody's place of work from the office completely. We still want the desk, the presence to be there, so they've got a place at work, which is probably a little bit different to some other organisations when they've done home working. It's been often to close part of an office down or something to save money. Well, the town hall isn't going anywhere, the museum's not going anywhere, farm's not going anywhere, so those will all still exist. So the idea is not to kind of hot desk or anything like that. So we may have to double up some of the equipment that we have if people have larger screens because of the work they do, and they're going to be partly at home. We will need to spend a little bit of money to make sure that they're still able to do that work properly and in a healthy way and not squint at the screen. So that's the recommendations there to really take this forward. I'm happy to have any questions to principals or anything else.
Okay, thanks, Sue. We got any questions? Derek?
Derek, number one.
Yes, Derek 1.
I presume in this these arrangements, the provision being made for the length of time that people are spending looking at these screens, because I know there's health and safety requirements that you can only look at a screen for so long, and then you have to move away from it to rest your eyes. So I presume this is being taken into consideration in this new flexible working policy.
Yes, that's an existing requirement and advice that we give to staff. I realise that there now some staff are slightly out of reach. So, you can't walk around and make sure everyone's observing that because we've got sort of people spread out all over the place. But part of this is the way that managers will keep checks on their staff, or team leaders keep checks on their staff, because it's not necessarily about keeping check that they're doing the work, it's keeping check on them and making sure they're okay. And those sort of things will be part of that script. I don't mean script as in a cold way, but we do need prompts for that contact to be consistent and to cover everything that we need to make sure it is happening. Yeah, but health and safety is still an issue, even though the employee would be remote from the office.
Yeah, but does this include councillors who are spending an inordinate amount of time on the screens now?
Sorry, no, this is for employees. I mean, I would advise members the same, but this policy is actually just for employees.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Hazel, hand up, yeah.
Yeah, just a quickie, Mr. Chairman. Going on from what Derek said, I think it's pretty serious actually for employees and for councillors. I quite often find that I'm not only attending meetings all day, but I've got evening ones as well, and they're usually allied to council. One week I had 15 Zoom meetings, which I'm sure some officers have even more. And I think we need to seriously look at how many meetings we are calling councillors to, and whether emails would be more relevant. Thanks.
Anybody else? I think the issues raised about members. I mean, I don't know. I kind of understand where you're coming from. I don't like sitting in front of a screen for too long either. In fact, I'm getting a bit edgy now. But I'm not sure. Well, it's not probably relevant to this, but it's something we can take back and look at, isn't it? What we can do. Leah, you wanting to?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Just because you started saying that, I think we need to look at the amount of time people spend on Zoom without breaks. So when meetings one stops and one starts, I work sort of full time at a PC for my job, and that is reading reports, writing emails, doing things like that. That is different from being on a Zoom meeting, where Zoom meetings in between, like working on a computer and watching telly, where you can sit back, you can glance away, it's not like not as much of a strain as being on your laptop or your computer writing and reading and composing emails and doing things like that, or doing technical drawings. So it is different. The DSE requirements are there that can be shared with members, and it's up to the individuals to have that break from the screen, refocus their eyes, things like that. But I think there may be something that it's very easy to do Zoom meetings, in the sense that we're not having to pop over to a different meeting room or a different building. So I've always had a concern there's no gaps between meetings for a lot of people. That includes everybody, including staff and members, which if we can maybe have some sort of agreed policy of engineering in some gaps between meetings so people can just stretch their legs and things like that, so they're not just parked at the sort of a screen for all afternoon. But I think it's different working using a laptop and a screen than being on meetings, because you can move around, you can stretch. It's like, you could say that about watching telly. Would you watch a film for 2 hours? where you can relax, you can sit back, you know, it's different from working at a computer. But I think there is something to say about the amount of eye strain and the constant pressure of having meeting on meeting on meeting without a break. So if we could have some sort of, maybe one of the groups you mentioned about that you consulted to look at things like that and have some sort of a softer guide about, you make sure you move around, you stretch, and also I think the chairman mentioned in one of our other talks about there was an initiative about monitoring how much exercise you get that he found a leaflet to. Whereas we're not getting as much exercise going up and down stairs at the town hall, I suppose, the offices and things like that. So that's the other thing to think about. So I think there is things to bring into it, but I don't think it's the same as working at a computer for sort of 8 to 10 hours a day doing actual work on the computer. I think meetings are different, but I think it's something to look at and think about, definitely.
Right, Sean, you?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, get a cat. They soon tell you when to get off meetings, as you've noticed. But yeah, I just wanted, as a member of the members training team, that we maybe look at that as part of the members training and look at some stuff around helping members, how they sort of safeguard themselves with computer use, and also how they sort of divide their time up, stuff like that. If members would be interested in something like that, I think that's something we could look at.
Yeah, we can stick that on the agenda for the member training group. Might be the easiest way to deal with it, I think. Now then, let's have a look. I think Jan had her hand up, a real one, a real hand. And then Sam's got one of them yellow hands.
Just to say, Chair, that I'm on the health and wellbeing group, which we're looking at the health and wellbeing of staff, obviously, but we could include members. We're looking at doing a health and wellbeing charter for staff, which could be rolled out to members, and that's with regard to the length of time you spend on computers, the slots of your diary, to manage your diary, and to encourage people not to organise back-to-back meetings. Also, you know, something like if you feel you can't add value by attending a meeting, to discuss with the chair in advance so that you're not going to endless meetings and go to meetings that you're not able to give input. It's in early stages yet, but we are looking at that. So I think what we could do is refer it to the members. What meeting did you say?
It's a member training group.
Yeah, I mean, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, is there? We could share that.
No, absolutely, yeah. I think we've got a meeting in the diary for some time in the fairly near future, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Sam?
Yeah, I don't want to prolong the discussion. I know we've got quite a big agenda. Just in terms of, it's probably almost a year since we went from all meeting in committee room 4 to meeting virtually, and I think there was a little bit of concern at the time that we'd end up with a democratic take part in democratic processes, and I think we've kind of gone the other way and overcompensated for that a little bit, and it's easy now to call, put on a member briefing, to invite members to come to an evening session to find out about what things are going on, and it's a lot easier to do it this way than everybody having to come into the town hall. And I think in some ways that's really positive, because I think we've probably involved and worked with members more over the last 12 months than we did in the first 12 months that I was here, and that's, it really enriches the decision making, and you're a lot more informed of what's going on, and they're all positive things, but we do absolutely need to get that balance right. And there are times when a briefing circulated by email would do the job, and I think probably as officers and as members we need to work together a little bit to get that balance right. So thanks for raising that.
Bev?
Yeah, it's just a quick one really, just about going back to the staff bit and their flexible working, and looking at the operational hours of the town hall at 7 AM to 7 PM. I think it's really important that there is a cut-off point for anybody who's flexible working, that there is no expectation that they will work beyond a certain time, because otherwise there'll be an expectation that they're always going to be there and answering emails and that kind of thing. And I think it's really important for their health and well-being that everybody switches off. If that's the time, 7 o'clock, then everybody switches off at that point, and there isn't an expectation for people to be carrying on working. Because I know in my experience of flexible working, until they put like a core hours in around it, everybody was working every hour. You could guarantee if you emailed at midnight, somebody would answer you, and it was very unhealthy. So I think it's just a thought, an idea really, to just put a cut-off point on for people at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. So right, that's it.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just reply to that? Yeah, thank you. We are building into the time policy that we have those exact barriers. And it just because operational hours become longer, we don't want people working 12-hour days either. So those are the bits of detail that we need to agree, not just with unions, but health and wellbeing is key to that. And we want, we've experienced this as a group of staff now for almost a year. So we know what we would advise ourselves. And I think that's what we need to put into that policy, so that we avoid overworking, undue pressures to respond at strange times. So yeah, that is a very valid point.
Right, are we, oh, where are we now? Right, do we need a mover and a seconder to support the recommendations? We haven't got any more questions on this, have we? Nope. Right, can I have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Right, we all agreed. Can't see any dissent in there. Yeah. Right. We do have a very long agenda here. I didn't really know how long it was going to go on, but it is going to go on quite a while. So I'm open to suggestions if we need a break at some point for 5 minutes just to stretch or something. We'll do the next item, and I'll leave it up to members to ask. All right. Next one, agenda item 12. Policy for collection of bulky waste. This is Steph, our Director of People and Place. It's all yours.
Yeah. Again, this is another report which sets out a policy framework for our household waste collection. So if I pass over to John Byford, who has the details of the report.
Thank you. Just the main point of the report is to make sure the council starts operating within the statutory limits that it should be. Bulky waste is a thing that is prescribed by law, and it only applies to certain things which are set out in the report. I won't bother with what they are, they're all set out there. But in the past, we've been collecting a lot of stuff, such as bags of waste, small items and things, which this particular legislation doesn't apply to, or should I say the regulations don't apply to. Also, we've been collecting things that are termed as construction and demolition waste, things like baths, kitchen cupboards, anything that was normally attached to a house, we shouldn't be collecting because it's classified as industrial waste, and we shouldn't be having that as part of the bulky waste system at all. But also, we want to change the system from, as it is at the moment, it's based on a time-based system where the resident, when they ring up, says how many items they've got to collect, but they also have to make an estimate whether it can be collected within 10 minutes, which puts rather a burden on the resident, because if the crew turn up and they think they can't do it within 10 minutes, it all gets very complicated with supervisors having to get involved in anything. So the easiest thing is, like virtually all the councils that I've ever come across, and all the ones in Cumbria do, is to operate by a set number of items, and in the proposals here, we're looking at up to 5 items for a set charge, and then additional charges on other items on top of that. But so the recommendations that we're looking at is to agree the policy that's set out in the back of the report, and also on the charging reckoning things. Also, to implement a communication campaign, because people have got used to this system and they're going to need time to change. So we're looking at not introducing it until the 1st of April to give us at least 6 or 7 weeks to get the message across to people, what they can have collected and what they can't, and what their alternatives are. And also to look at any additional income that we get generated from this to stay within the service. That with the income at the moment, we're charging £10 per collection. The actual collection cost from the contractor is very, very close to the £10. And before the end of the contract, we'll probably overtake a £10 with inflation. But there's never been any account taken of the administration costs that we have. We have a customer service contact centre, which has to be staffed and run. There's cash handling, there's supervisors out there making sure that everything's running smoothly, and it's all going to be paid for. And it never has been. Some estimates that have been done up in Scotland through a modelling computer programme estimated it was around £11 per collection. So you're really looking at about £21 to break even. At the moment, the council's subsidising this service by just in excess of £100,000, and with the finances as they are in all councils now, that's a lot of money to be subsidising people that should be paying for their own waste to be taken away. They're the ones who generate the waste. The other aspect of the thing is that the items that are being collected, there's with the waste hierarchy, what we should be doing is encouraging that we don't generate waste at all. But if we do have to generate it, we should be looking to reuse it and recover it. And the system we have on bulky waste is we do look to recover the value of these items, or reuse them, or things through the company that collects it. But there are other items that we shouldn't be collecting due to the regulations, but could be recycled or reused. And therefore, I've done 3 different appendices at the back of the report that sets out the things that we should be collecting, and the team on the customer services will take orders for that and organise a collection of that. But there is the second one of those appendices is stuff that we shouldn't be taking, but could easily be reused or recycled. So, just an idea of where you might go to have that done. And the third list is things that we shouldn't be taking, and there's no real value in them. So they either need taken to the household waste recycling centre, or somebody should be organising a separate collection by a company that's allowed to collect it. It should be noted really that, and I don't, members have probably had it themselves, when I had a cooker fitted last August, I had to pay over £20 to have that taken away. So and that was just for one item. And most retailers now, if you want them to take stuff away, it costs money. The other thing about the bulky waste, well, it is a cheap service, is a lot of, this is why the construction and demolition waste was taken out of the remit of it, is that lots of builders and workmen were telling customers in households that they could just leave the stuff behind and the council would come along and collect it. And a lot of times it was for nothing. And so the change of legislation is to stop this happening. So what we've looked at is what would be an equitable system for Barrow itself. And we know that people do struggle at times to find money to pay for these services. So the current cost is £10. What we're recommending is that this moves up to £15. It's interesting to see that if we'd have followed the indexing that is applied to refuse collection over the last 9 years since the costs were increased, it would have just been over £15 anyway. So we're looking at saying that we should increase the charge for up to 5 items to be £15 from 1st of April next year. And then any additional items being a fifth of that, which is £3 per item, up to a maximum of £10. But then to try and get back to an unsubsidised service, that we've raised it to £20 the following year, and then that would be £4 an item on top of that, which isn't, compared with say what commercial operators are asking, is not a great deal. And it should be noted that there's a table in the report that it's still a lot cheaper than any other authority within Cumbria. But I've also put in there that because of the way the costs are going, and it still will be a subsidised service, that you should look at reviewing the cost, the charge every year after that, to make sure that you're getting somewhere near a paid for service. Thank you.
Right, thanks, John and Steph. Do we have any questions?
Councillor Maddox has indicated.
Go on, Wendy.
Can I just check something with this gentleman? I've got the paperwork here. That the bulky waste was going up £15 for 5 items from next year. On this paperwork, he said it's from this year. It's from April 2021, not 22. Am I right? Is the paper right, or is he right in what he said? Because he said it was going up next year.
If it's, sorry, it's my fault as that, because I wrote it last year and I haven't changed the wording. It's taken me a long time to get it through to this position, to get it to members, and it's a slip of the pen or the computer that when I wrote it, it was next year, and it is from April the 1st this year. Thanks for pointing that out to me.
Yeah.
I think we've all lost sense of time under all this lockdown stuff. I don't know what day, week, month, year it is either. So, but it's from April 2021. This year. That's this year, isn't it? 2021. I'll get used to it sometime towards probably the end of December. Right. Have we got any more questions, comments? Right. I need a mover and a seconder again, don't I? Can I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations, please?
I'll move it, Chair.
That. Seconder?
I'll second it.
Right. Are we all agreed? Can't see any. Are we all agreed? Yeah? Yes. Splendid. Right. Do we want to move on to agenda item 13, High Street Heritage Action Zone Year 1 update from Helen Houston? Do we? Yes. Right. Go for it, Helen. It's all yours.
Thanks very much, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, just going to do a quick update report on the High Street Heritage Action Zone. I'm just going to show a few slides to summarise my report and a bit of a memoir for myself, so just bear with me 1 second. There we go, hopefully that's worked. So yeah, just as a recap, obviously the High Street Heritage Action Zone agreement came to this committee nearly 12 months ago now. and we were awarded the funding, which was to begin in April of 2020. However, due to the COVID pandemic, then there's been a little bit of a delay. So just to recap, what is a High Street Heritage Action Zone? The goal is to make the High Street a more attractive, engaging, vibrant place for people to live, work and spend time. This was the goal before the pandemic, and obviously it has even more resonance now. So the overall programme for the Heritage Action Zone, which is called Rediscover Barrow, which is focused around Duke Street, including Ramsden Square, a little bit of Abbey Road and Cornwallis Street. So we've got £1.9 million in total, and as I said, it was to run from April 2020 to March 2024. Due to COVID, the actual outrunning of the award was embargoed until August, September time of 2020. So we've been trying to sort of catch up with ourselves since that time. So the majority of the funding comes from Historic England, and it's matched with local contributions. And it's to deliver a suite of property grants to the exterior of shops and buildings within the area, enhancements to the public realm, and some cultural activity and events. So as I said, the report does give a more detail about the update, but in summary, obviously there has been delay to the programme due to COVID and lockdown, specifically because a number of the shops and services within the area have been closed, either fully or have opened up for parts of the year and obviously are now closed again. So there's been sensitivities about dealing with shop owners, and obviously there's been some apprehension on their part about when the businesses were able to operate again and when they could welcome customers back into their premises. Having said that, we still do have a number of interested owners and tenants that are wanting to have work done on their property, and we hope that there'll be, as I say, a push in 2021 as soon as restrictions are lifted, and that we can get on with the work, and we'll be able to see some physical improvements happening in the street. As part of the funding scheme, we were to appoint a project officer for the Heritage Action Zone, and we have been able to do that just before Christmas, and they start next week. So again, that will be a point of contact for businesses within the area to apply for the grants and work through that process. We are going to be starting to monitor footfall within the area. Again, obviously the footfall within the town centre this year is much reduced. So it will be interesting to monitor that through the lifetime of the scheme, and hopefully that will begin to pick up when restrictions are lifted again. We have brought in some consultancy support to deliver some spend before the end of the financial year, so the end of March 2021. And as I said, some of this work revolves more around sort of preparatory studies and getting the information together rather than actually being physically able to do any activity in the high street. So going forward, as work picks up, we'll be providing quarterly updates to members, and at some point we really hope that we can hold a launch event for the project where people will be able to come together in the street and you know, have a launch, some kind of launch activity. So just to tell you what we have been able to do, we were able to get a small pilot grant from Historic England of £10,000 to deliver some COVID-proof activity, which is ongoing at the moment. We started that in November when some of the shops and services were open, and we've done some social media and publicised things on the website and on Radio Cumbria and in the press to ask people about their memories of Duke Street and the shops and services there. And that will be made into a short guided tour that will be held initially as an online live event, but obviously people can then go back and view it again afterwards as many times as they like from wherever they are in the world or in the town. And that is being done at the moment. We were able to get some footage, as I say, when the shops were open, and hopefully when they reopen. People have been sharing memories by logging on to the website and leaving messages similar to the new Constellation, and so that project obviously is ongoing, and at the end of that we'll produce an evaluation report to say how many people we were able to engage in the process. So following on from that, there was also another pot of money that we could bid into for delivering cultural activity over the course of the project, so until 2024, and the maximum amount that will be awarded if we're successful is £100,000, and that's to cover the whole of the 4 years. And this will be to deliver some events and activities in the High Street, whether they're socially distanced or when restrictions are lifted. We can have more public events. So we're going to be working with the Forum, the Market and the Library on helping to deliver some of those events, to have film screenings and exhibitions, and some hopefully theatrical performances as well from local groups, and also using some of the projectors that we have at the Forum at the moment for light display and projecting some of the images from the archives relating to the history of Duke Street and the surrounding area. So we'll find out about this grant imminently, hopefully by the end of the month. So hopefully you'll be able to see that in the press shortly. So just quickly to summarise, with this report, it's asking you to note the update of year one. It obviously hasn't been as programmed because of the pandemic, and that the momentum will obviously increase in year two to bring our programme spend back on track. Just to say as well, it's outlined in the report that the underspend has been nationally, of course, so that there is the opportunity there for further funding to be apportioned up to all the High Street Heritage Action Zones in the country. So we're asking for delegation to accept additional funding should it be made available. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks, Helen. That'll be can't wait till we can actually go out and walk and stuff out there on Duke Street again. Maybe we could have a council meeting live on Duke Street. That'd be a major attraction, wouldn't it? That would be awesome, wouldn't it? Right, Derek 1, go for it.
Thank you. This Heritage Fund was for the High Street. Then we put in for the big one for regeneration of the town centre. The Duke Street, many people don't regard that as the High Street. It's Dalton Road. You think it swayed them when we looked at the Duke Street rather than Dalton Road?
Well, the High Street Heritage Action Zone pot of money and the Future High Street Fund pot of money actually came out of a bigger pot of government money that was all designed for town centres. And the High Street Heritage Action Zone is looked after by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, and the Future High Street Fund was looked after by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. So the money was together and then it was separated out. For the High Street Heritage Action Zone, there was some rules that had to be applied for where you could choose to spend the money, and the High Street had to be within a conservation area. So the conservation area, Central Borough Conservation Area, is focused around Abbey Road, Duke Street, some of the residential property alongside Duke Street, the Town Hall, and the area to the back of the Town Hall, bounded by Lawson Street and Cornwallis Street. So that really meant that we could, for the Heritage Action Zone, we could only look at streets within that area. We did take advice from Historic England about whether we should look at Duke Street or Abbey Road, and they felt that Duke Street had more shops and services on it, in terms of, hairdressers, banks, retail shops, solicitors. So perhaps not national retailers per se, but shops and services that people would use in a town centre. But also it had to have that historic angle to it as well, which is why we couldn't, as I said, we couldn't choose Dalton Road for that. So when we looked at the Future High Street Fund, that was about a different offer really, and not the kind of heritage and historic buildings angle. That was more about let's say a different scheme that we took forward. So I don't know if I've answered your question there actually, but the two pots of money, they were both for the town centre, but this particular pot had to have a very strong heritage focus, and the area that we chose had to be in a conservation area.
I think that when we put in for the town centre, there was no mention of High Street in that. The submission for that. Is that correct?
Well, the Future High Street Fund was called the Future High Street Fund, so the name was in the title, but it was very much about the revitalisation of the town centre as a whole in terms of not just retail, but infrastructure, leisure, increasing dwell time and footfall within the town centre.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Have we got any more? No. So thanks, Helen. So we can look forward to loads of exciting stuff happening when we can all go out and do normal stuff again and see humans instead of all these little oblong flat faces. Yeah.
Hopefully, yes.
Super. Can't come soon enough.
No.
Okay. Right. Oh,
Thank
do
you
we
very
have to?
much.
All right. Thank you. Do we need a mover and a seconder again?
Yes, please.
Second move. Can we have a mover and a seconder then? It's just to, yeah.
Move it.
I'll second it. Anyway.
All right. Cheers. Are we all happy with the report? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Thank you. Right. Agenda item 14, stray dogs policy. Keith Johnson.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is a short paper, and it introduces a policy document on stray dogs, and the recommendation is that Executive Committee approve it. But I'll just give you a little bit of background. Members will be aware that we are trying to make our corporate enforcement more robust by the introduction of various policies, and this paper just follows in that route. I've been asked to review the operation at the Borough Kennels, and in so doing, I discovered that most of the authorities in Cumbria and North Lancashire underpinned their service by having a policy in place. And the purpose of that policy is so that both officers and residents were fully aware of what the council's statutory duty is and what action would be taken. So this policy simply underpins that. It's just a short policy. It doesn't really require a great deal of change, just some minor tweaks of things that we do in terms of our record keeping and notices that we may issue to members of the public if a stray dog is reunited. But I put a little bit of information in the covering paper to you just to let you know the scale of the number of stray dogs that we have in the borough. So I think beyond that, I don't think it requires much more interrogation. And if anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
All right, thanks, Keith. I was when I first saw the report, I was just relieved at how many dogs actually get safely back home or taken on by somebody else, which was a great relief not to see loads of dogs put down when I saw this. So,
well, I think just two dogs in 4 years is testament to that, and those dogs that were put down on veterinary advice. So, yeah.
So, have we got any questions, comments? No. Can we? I've lost me. Uh-oh. I've lost track of all my different things on my pad now. Do I need a mover and a seconder for this, John?
Yes.
Yeah, go on. Can we have a mover and a seconder, please?
Move the report, Chair. And the recommendations.
Oh,
second it.
Found it. Right. We all agreed, yeah? Yep. Right. Cheers. Thank you. Next item, I found it again now. Right, agenda item 15, Green Homes Grant, Local Authority Delivery Phase 2. This is Chris Jones. Chris?
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, everybody. I can sense the energy in the virtual rooms maybe flagging slightly, so I'll try and be brief. Green Homes Grant is a large programme, £2 billion altogether, which is aimed at installing low carbon measures such as insulation and heat pumps, that sort of thing, into people's homes. The bulk of this, 1.5 billion, is allocated through a voucher scheme to which individual householders can apply to do the measures and arrange them themselves. But £500 million is allocated to what's called local authority delivery, which allows local authorities, as the name suggests, to directly deliver measures. And the advantages of this is that you can try and reach people who might be either reticent or struggle with the applications themselves. There's slightly more flexibility in the criteria, and probably most importantly for Barrow, it allows us to do things like block improvements, which individuals couldn't really organise for themselves. The local authority delivery 500 million was allocated into two phases. An initial phase of 200 million for phase one, which was for the current financial year, for which we weren't able to bid into because the timescales were just unrealistic. The further 300 million in phase two, which is for the next financial year, 21-22. Phase one local authority delivery was through individual applications from individual local authorities. But phase two is not being allocated in that way. And it's being delivered through what are called local energy hubs, which are a non-departmental body sponsored by BEIS, the Business and Energy Department. And they want to contract with consortia of local authorities based on either let boundaries or combined authorities, which very often are the same, of course. So in Cumbria, they want a whole Cumbria approach, and somebody needs to act as accountable body for this. And I don't think we're in a realistic position to do that, but Eden District Council, who were in a position to bid into phase one, have offered to do this. And what they will do is take in the funding, distribute that to the other local authorities to deliver their schemes. So individual local authorities such as Barrow will be responsible for identifying schemes, but they will draw down the money from Eden. And Eden will also do a central procurement process using a procurement specialist with a main contractor, but importantly, they will have underneath this what's called a dynamic purchasing framework, which will allow other small local contractors to piggyback onto that central main contractor and deliver schemes locally. So what I'm asking you to approve now is simply that Eden acts as accountable body for a Cumbria scheme for the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Phase 2.
Thanks, Chris. Have we got any questions? No? Can I have a mover and a seconder then?
I'll move it.
Second. Seconded.
Right. We all agreed? Yes. Super. Thanks, Chris. Right. Thank you. Right. Now.
The wonderful young lady.
Jan, you're back with agenda item 16, safeguarding adults policy.
Yeah,
and
what
procedures.
let's turn this.
You're on mute, Jan.
Sorry, there's a lot of noise going on in the background, that's why. Thanks, Chair. I'm bringing the reviewed Safeguarding Adults Policy and Procedures and the reviewed Children's Policy and Procedures and a Modern Slavery Statement. I'm now designated lead for safeguarding, and the existing safeguarding policy was ready for renewal. We've extended it to have 2 separate ones now for children and for adults. And we've also got the Modern Slavery Statement in recognition that we've now signed up for the Charter Against Modern Slavery. I'm asking members to recommend that we adopt the policies and note that we'll be delivering a training programme. This is just the start of the policy and procedure. Obviously, following, if I get them approved, I'll need to move on to working at producing a structure that enables us to implement the procedure that will involve. At the moment, I am the only person involved with safeguarding, but we obviously need to expand that through the workforce. We need everybody to be aware that we've all got a responsibility for safeguarding, and we need to build that into every member of staff's responsibilities. So we'll be looking at promoting training for all staff, including members, and that would be probably a half day. I'm making some enquiries. I'm working with other districts to find out what's best suited. And then we'll be extending it to obviously the homeless team. People that are at the sharp end will need increased safeguarding training, as I will as a designated lead, and designated officers that we need throughout the council. I'm working on that now at present, but obviously until we get the policy and procedures agreed, the structure has to follow. It's very much, a lot of it is bog standard for safeguarding. Obviously we've had to do a considerable amount of work because of all the issues around safeguarding. You know, we've got modern slavery, sexual exploitation, so we've needed to ensure that all that's included. I'm not professing that I've written all this myself. Obviously I've had to reference an awful lot of policies to produce this. I've tried to do it as simply as possible, if that makes sense. Use English that we understand, that isn't too NHS health and social care based. Obviously I'm on the Cumbria Safeguarding Adult Board. I represent all the districts as the adult safeguarding rep, and I do feel at present that we really need to increase our knowledge and awareness for staff of safeguarding. It needs to be built into our working life and outside, obviously. And members, I know, are keen to be involved in safeguarding awareness and sexual exploitation. So that's the next stage. Don't know if anybody's got any questions. I realise I've got the graveyard slot on on the agenda, and it is quite heavy going. But I would hope that members would agree and endorse that the policies and procedures be adopted and we move forward with it.
Right, thanks, Jan. Congratulations on being made the safeguarding lead. That's extremely valuable. Sean.
Yeah, well done on a good piece of work there. I think these sort of things are very important. To see stuff like this coming in to places like the council, because we're working in the arts and the third sector over the last 20 years, it's kind of a lot of things like that. There's a lot of training around such things, and not so much in the kind of business world and such places. So it's really good to see. And yeah, just really well written, easy to understand. I've written a lot of these type of policies myself over the years, so I know it's hard to keep on top of them and to have all the latest legislation and all those sort of things. So sort of totally well done. And just a quick question: is there sort of safeguarding and kind of stuff around duty of care internally? Is that going to have its own documentation? Sort of sort of on top of these sort of things?
Well, there's obviously the procedures, Sean, that are attached, and that is why I've mentioned that we need a structure so that the procedures can be followed, and we need a team of safeguarding staff that have responsibilities, so that it's spread throughout the staffing. And as Steph rightly said to me, that services need to have leads within their departments to ensure that we're all fulfilling our responsibilities. So this is the start, Sean, really.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lee?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a graveyard slot in a way, but and it's a shame really, because the importance of this, I think, often is underestimated with outside of healthcare or education, where obviously a lot of the front line do see a lot of situations. I know you won't underestimate it because the housing team do a lot of face-to-face and frontline work and going into houses, but if you ever do any safeguard training, even the first sort of level one, it's harrowing stuff, it's scary stuff, but it's so important to recognise signs and have a certain attitude about reporting things that you're concerned about, you know, not err on the side of caution, and not just because you might know a family, you know, just if in education, if you're a teacher, you're on no certain terms, you report everything that you might feel uncomfortable about. So I think it's really important that certainly coming out of the lockdown and maybe out of the pandemic, where we are going to experience a lot of a spike in things like children being cooped up at home a bit more, and maybe some potentially more domestic abuse, domestic violence. That all our staff are aware and recognise and comfortable with going forward. So the policies, I think, like you said, Jan, that's going to be followed up by training and done in the right way. It makes people comfortable in using the policies, reporting, having a word, talking, and just having an awareness of the responsibilities we've got. It's a great responsibility, but also it's an essential thing to get right. So I think it's very important, and I don't want it just to be not overlooked, but you know what I mean. It's late on in a long meeting, but it's very important. I've even been in licensing meetings where you think, you know, some of the reports you're seeing, where's the safeguarding element over these, you know, so it does cross-cut everything we do. You don't have to be a frontline worker or face-to-face. So I think it's a massive subject to get right, and I'm thankful for you for taking it on and agreeing to do it. And it can be quite harrowing and a bit of pressure at times. So I hope you get all the support you need. And if you feel that anyone that's working on behalf of the council needs the training, I think hopefully we can extend that to them and make sure everyone who's representing the council, even if they're not employed by us, is adopting the right policies. But thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite scary to even think that you need to have a policy about modern slavery. It's like, you know, it's some unthinkable really, but we do. So, you know, anyway, Anne?
No, thanks, Chair. I've woke up, I've had a nap in between. No, I'm only joking, I haven't. I've just wondered whether we need a safeguarding lead for members as well, and whether we actually need to, you know, incorporate these policies within our own group policies, you know, because I know we've had cases, and I know I'm not mentioning names, but I know on planning we get a lot of abuse and a lot of hassle, and I sometimes worry about the health of some of the planning members when this occurs. So I wondered whether we should have a set of policies the same for members, or are we incorporated in this? And I know I read through it, glanced through it, but I know it talks about members' duties and responsibilities, but it doesn't actually say anything about members' problems if they have any.
Yeah. With the intended structure that I'm going to put forward to management team to discuss initially, there will be a safeguarding champion, which will be an elected member, and they will fulfil that role as a link, and they would obviously be trained to the higher level and link in with me as designated safeguarding lead. And we'd also be looking to arrange that we have a safeguarding forum, which the elected member, the designated officers, we would probably hold it quarterly. I'm still drafting the report, and they would be the member link with the safeguarding team. Yeah, it's very much a staff and members approach as far as I'm concerned, because everybody's got that responsibility, whatever your role within the council. So yeah, does that sound?
Yeah, that's fine. Just as long as we weren't forgotten.
How could I forget you, Anne?
Well, that's been said. That has been said before, and quite recently, really.
Sean, is that a new hand up?
It is, Chair. Just on the back of what Anne was saying. One of the things like as members we've been a bit confused about of late when we've been talking about sort of such subjects is where does the duty of care lie as far as members are concerned when it comes to things like safeguarding issues and making sure that members are safe? Because we don't seem to we're obviously not employed by the council, but is there a duty of care anywhere for if we have problems for being looked after?
John, can you enlighten us on members?
I was thinking actually more of Debbie, to be honest.
No, I mean, it's a very good question, and I think it's something that we will take away and look at further. And to some extent, some of the political group parties will have their own support mechanisms around individual members. But there's we'll maybe look at the good practice and learning that's maybe out there and bring that back to maybe the member training development group with the other stuff that's coming forward.
Lee, are you wanting to comment?
Yeah, just to quickly say that the follow-up training the LGA doing it would be a good opportunity to flash out with them. They'll have the experience of what happens elsewhere and how real situations have been dealt with. Because one thing, I think the first training didn't scope that enough, but I think everybody came away from that training really liking the way the facilitators ran that training. So it was about real life situations, and it was talking about what's happened and how and why. So, and quite an open approach to the conversation. They did pick up on some of the issues that we've had, and they said they were going to refine the next set of training around some of the issues which did come up from that first session. So I think along the lines of our political groups, and like Debbie says, we need to make sure everybody is covered, because you could say a political group, and we haven't got any, but what if we had an independent councillor, so we can't just rely on that. We don't want anyone to fall through the gaps of being sort of protected. So I think with the LGA and the things that Debbie just said, I think we need to sort of come to sort of conclusions so we can feed it back into how Jan looks at the whole patch of everybody that's got a link to residents, and also that's vulnerable to situations themselves. So we need to look after everybody as well as our residents equally, don't we? But yeah, I think the LGA training should be a good opportunity to tackle that subject as well.
Are we any more? Right, now then, it's actually 2 items here. Agenda item 16, Safeguarding Adults Policy and the Modern Slavery Statement. Can I have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Right. Agreed?
Agreed.
And then agenda item 17, Safeguarding Children Policy. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that?
Also, can I move that as well, Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Right.
Thank you.
Don't see any dissent. Yes, agreed. We look forward to having some sessions to train us up then, Jan. Look forward to it. Maybe in person, who knows? Who knows? Hopefully in person at some point. Right, well, according to my notes here, that brings us to the end of the public section of the meeting. So I need a mover and a seconder to go into part 2 to discuss the 2 items that we've got for part 2.
I'll move it.
Second it.
Right, is that agreed?
Great.
Right. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. We're off into part 2 now. Sorry about that. See you later. Bye.